Okay, so this is today's what, Tuesday, and this is the backend squad. I'm starting to get my squad names right. I'm really about to call it infrastructure squad, and then I could hear all the voices correcting me in my head before I even said this. I was like, nope, 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 not infrastructure. Today's backend. All right, so this is the backend squad, and last week, we worked on developing a couple of endpoints, right? We had Dakwa share his stream and work through creating the subcategories endpoint. And we had Jimmy and his team work off screen developing the categories endpoint. So Dakwa worked on subcategories and Jimmy and his squad worked on the categories endpoint. I'm not going to subject them to showing us that today, but hopefully at least by the next class, you should be able to show us that. All right. And it can be anyone like work as a team. It's not just you, Jimmy. Like it's very important to be able to, combine your knowledge and get things done rather than try to be a solo tree right in the forest. Um, so today, no, sorry, before I finish. So last week we created, a couple of tables. We created more tables. And I believe everyone by now should be comfortable with the concept of what a table is, right? And how to create a table. Today, I'm going to revisit some of those concepts just so that we're a little more, you know, clear, and I will be a lot more open for us to ask questions. What I was planning on doing today was to have us work on how to interact with the file system, right? How do you open up a file? How do you write to a file on disk? So for example, if you have a CSV file, how would you read that and maybe output the contents, right, to an API endpoint? Or how would you write the data from a database to a file on disk? Stuff like that. Depending on how this first half of it goes, so the first hour, I'm changing my plans now. We're just going to use it to revisit, the background concepts. Depending on how that goes, we may be able to go through the second half quicker than it would be, right? So, well, the first 45 minutes from now till 7, we're just going to revisit all the concepts we've learned back end. We're not going to go through teaching everything, but it's going to be more conversational, more interactive. So, feel free to unmute your mic whenever you want to speak. And I also will be looking for a response to make sure that you hear what I'm saying, or if you're not, or if you don't understand it, please just tell me, excuse me, that makes no sense. All right, and then we'll get to a point where it makes sense. Okay. So first thing that we're going to start off with is for us to really understand where what we're doing fits in the picture. I wouldn't go with surgery, right, as an example of what I'm trying to teach, because surgery indicates a very highly detailed expert knowledge of the inner workings and how things come together. I'm totally not trying to get you there. It's impossible to get there in 8 weeks, right? Let's go more with an analogy of, I'm trying to teach you to make basic furniture, not complex furniture, right? Not designer furniture, not leatherworks. I'm trying to teach you to make basic furniture, a basic stool, basic table, basic chair. But I'm trying to teach you the techniques and the concept that is behind furniture making, such that if you can make basic furniture, when you see designs for very complex furniture, or you get a request for very complex furniture, and you can look at the design and you can make that complex furniture because you understand the tools, you understand the standards, right? You understand how to read the design and interpret it and what parts you would need, okay? And those will sound as building blocks for where then you will be designing furniture and designing complex furniture. So I don't want to go as far as surgery because I think that pushes it a little too far. So far, all the JavaScript we've learned is basic, and all the JavaScript we've used is basic. This is as basic as it gets. This is the ABCs of JavaScript, right? We haven't talked about more complex, constructs like, I mean, there are things, if I say things like economy of mechanization or cyclomatic complexity, right? Like, it sounds like total jargons, but those are things that at some point you will have to understand what they mean. That's when you're now in the surgery of it, because those things are things that define the security of your code, or how manageable it is and how complex or how elegant code is. Right? But that's total brief right now. So we're going to stay in the realm of, I mean, there's code that I write here that's not the way I would write it at work, at least not for the level I should be at, right? But that you can write and it's perfectly okay, right? Anybody interviewing you, they won't bother with that because they're not interviewing you to be a lead or an architect, right? Now, if they were, then they would scrutinize the code a lot more. So from the metaphor of creating furniture, we're learning the basic tools, right? We're learning what a nail does. We're learning what glue does. We're learning what the wood is for. We're learning maybe some basic different types of wood, right? I'm not going to teach you about how to grow those trees, right? I'm not going to go that far. So let's come back to the fundamentals of how the internet works, right? And I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I want answers. Who remembers what the model that I said the internet operates? Does anyone remember? One part of it is a request, and the other part of it is a what?
Response.
Response. So the internet operates on a request response model. What makes a request?
User.
No. A client makes a request. Essentially a browser, an app, maybe another server,
So
right?
those things are the clients.
Yes, those are the clients. So you have a client and you have a server, okay? A client makes a request and the server responds to the request. So in terms of where Node.js fits, where is Node.js in this picture?
Server.
Right. Which is why your Node.js callback, your route callback, always has request, response. The request is how you deal with what the client sent to you, the request that the client made. That's why you access the body of the request to see the data the client sent, because the data is passed as a JSON document. It is part of the body. Okay? And then you use the you use the response object to package your response to send that. The request object actually has a method on it. Remember, methods are actions. And it has a method on it called send that you use to send the response. Like, it is so English that if you just think about it and you're trying to tell it as a story, you will actually get the answers that you need. So the server sends a response. The response object has a send method on it that says, hey, response object, send this. So whatever you need to do in interacting with the client from the server, interacting back to the client, is on the response. Whatever you need to handle the request coming in from the client is on what? The request. Okay? But remember that request response model. Node.js is server-side JavaScript. It lives on the server. When you create an Express app or an Express server, an Express is used to create a web server, right? An HTTP server. So whatever, when you create an Express server, you're creating an HTTP server that is set up to listen for incoming requests. Remember how you start up the server in Express? Does anyone remember?
What you mean the listening parts?
Yeah. What's the method called?
It was app dots. Ooh.
What's the method that sets up the server to wait for requests coming in on a specific port?
Listen.
Exactly. Listen. App.listen. So you set the server and it's just waiting, literally watching a door, right? Waiting for a mailman to come with a request packet, right? So it's waiting. It is listening on a port. What's the default port for HTTP?
88.
No. HTTP is a port.
500. 500.
Sorry?
500.
No.
80.
80. I think Rajini said 80 as well, right? HTTP requests by default are on port 80. If you make an HTTP request, it goes to port 80. So if you want to set up a server to accept HTTP requests, you set up at port 80. And that's the default. You don't need to do anything else. Routers will automatically route to that port because that's the default port for HTTP. Who knows what the default port for HTTPS is?
443.
Yeah, 443. And what's the difference between, so HTTP is port 80, HTTPS is port 443. What's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS?
Security.
S is secure.
S is secure. It's an encrypted connection. If you ever do anything that deals with usernames, passwords, user data, whatever it is, HTTPS. By now, the default is HTTPS because it doesn't just secure the connection, it also authenticates the provider of that web application or that REST service, right? Because there's a certificate attached. It's a VeriSign certificate, right? I mean, there are different certificate authorities, but the biggest is VeriSign. And they have a process of authenticating the organization before issuing a certificate. So if you go to an HTTPS application and you look at the certificate and it says VeriSign, it means you can trust them and give them your data, right? At least you can trust that they are who they claim to be. Now you can create, of course, people can create, I can generate a certificate on my computer right now. It will be a self-signed certificate. That means I generated it and I signed it, I authenticated myself, right? Now, if I use a self-signed certificate, your browser is going to warn you and say, hey, this certificate is self-signed. So when it's HTTPS, no third party or no authority has verified this entity is legit, okay? But HTTPS means it is a secure HTTP connection, right? It is encrypted. So your communication back and forth, your requests and your response are encrypted, and the authority has been authenticated or verified in some way. Okay, and the default port for HTTPS is 443. Okay, so now what's a port? Anyone?
The door.
Like a door. Like literally, so the word port, portal, French for door, port, la porte, or la porte, right? So portal, right? The passageway, the entry point. Okay.
Inka, quick question.
Mhm.
So in this class, we've been using ports 4200 and 4300.
Mhm.
Is it because these are more like ports for practice? Like I'm trying to understand if we're not going to do something that is really real, like say I want to build a website for a school or something.
Mhm.
I probably will now go with the default, which is either 443 or port 80, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's because you're working in a development environment, okay? And on a lot of computers, especially a lot of development computers, port 80 is already taken if you have Apache installed. So on my computer, for example, port 80 is taken. I have an Apache server running, right? And that's already taking port 80. So you typically don't develop locally on port 80. You can create virtual hosts, and then you have to create a host file and routing, you know, to have for you to run multiple, essentially subdomains of localhost. So if I share my screen, then I'll show you what that means. But the whole concept of running on port 4200 is to save you a lot of development setup, right? So if I do this, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So you see what I have here is what's called a hosts file. And here I have mapping multiple different application, right, to my local host. But then this is just mapping, this is just DNS routing. There's so many other things I need to do. If I do no, what's it? Let me see sites available. Okay, sorry. Right? These are all configuration files for my Apache server that serve those virtual hosts. Okay? But what that means is that I can actually come here and I can do something like VRs, DNS, right? And if I do this, actually have an application running on my server. This is at port 80, but then there's extra routing setup. All right. So the port 42, 100, 4300, these are all like development ports so that you can develop locally without having to compete with port 80. Okay? But in practice, in deployment, you typically wouldn't deploy an application to port 4200. I mean, you could if you really needed to, but it's more like port 8080 or 8081 or 8082. And those are cases where you have what's called the load balancer on port 80. And that load balancer takes the traffic coming in from port 80 and then routes it to another server that's listed on port 8080, 8081. That's how elastic beanstalk works. That's great for people here who aren't on infrastructure. But just remember, your default internet port is port 80 for HTTP and port 443 for HTTPS. There are many other ports, and there are ports that are designated for specific users, like port 22, right, is, what's port 22? SSH. Port 25 is SMTP. Port 3306 is MySQL. MySQL by default listens on port 3306, but that is not HTTP, right? That's TCP port 3306. Okay, just remember port, you can have exactly the same address, but the port is a particular door to that address. All right. Okay. So now that we've said that, what is Node.js? And how is it different from, let's say, AngularJS or any other JavaScript? What's the difference?
I understand that Node.js enables us to run JavaScript on the server side. I understand that JavaScript was originally made for the front end for adding interactivity to websites. So Node.js enables us to run JavaScript on the server side. And, you know, we can perform quite a lot of operations on the server side thanks to Node.js. I understand that Node.js allows faster response because it doesn't wait for the requests, the original request to be handled before taking the next request.
Right. So that's a slightly, yes. That's in comparison. Now that is not now a comparison with Angular, right? But more a comparison with things like PHP, other server-side technology. But what's
Angular is front end.
Exactly. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Angular is front end. It's a JavaScript framework, well, TypeScript, but it compiles into JavaScript, right? So it's a JavaScript framework for the front end. Node.js is a JavaScript framework for the back end, right? Your Angular application will send requests to your Node.js server. And your Node.js server will send responses back to your Angular application, right? And that's how they work. Your Angular application cannot connect directly to a database. Typically cannot. It needs to talk to a server, and the server is what can talk to a database, right? Your Node.js typically cannot directly manipulate a server. Okay, it can provide outputs that a server can read, but it typically cannot directly interact with the user. The real-time interactions that you have in JavaScript with the user are not possible in Node.js because Node.js executes, runs, does everything it does on the server. Right? The Node.js JavaScript never leaves the server. The user can never see it. The Angular JavaScript, on the other hand, runs in the browser, so the user has full access to it. But because it runs in the browser, it can respond to the user immediately, which is why you can use it for animation, you can use it for all kinds of user interactivity because it actually runs in the browser. Now, the benefit of having modern frameworks like Angular and Node is that, especially on the Angular side, the more exciting part is on the Angular side because it now allows you to share the work of processing information. Clients can now do some of the heavy lifting, can now do some of the work. So for example, if you have a form where users upload files and you say, okay, only accept a certain file type, only accept the maximum size, maybe it's a CSV, show the user a preview of the contents of that CSV before sending it to the server. You can do all of that processing on the client side without affecting the server, which means your server can handle a lot more load than usual. You get what I mean? Because you're now using client computers. It's kind of a way of distributed compute. Okay, in the past, when we didn't have that much power in the browser and in JavaScript, like in the 2000s and 90s, you had to send it to the server did some work, and send you a preview. You say, yes, okay, everything you did had to come from the server. The server had to do all the processing. The front end only had minimal processing capability. Okay, so back to Node.js. It is server side, it lives on the server, which is why it can interact with a database, right? It can interact with some other server applications. And in very good application design, you typically would create a clear distinction such that you cannot access the database server from the internet. You can only access it from within its local network. Remember, the internet is a network of networks. You have this network, they're connected, right? Your browser is on this network. The database server is on this network. You can't connect your database server directly. There's only one door open, which is typically like your Node.js server. And any request to the database will go through Node.js. You request data, Node.js connects to the database, fetches the data, and sends it back as a response. There's no direct access to that database. So your Express server works like a broker. It does a lot of things, but it handles all the interactions with the outside world. They all hit that one point of entry. Okay? That is what we've been learning. Now, how do you make that happen? How do you then create a server? We use a node module called Express. It's an open source third-party module. Node.js is a framework, right? It's a server-side framework. It has a huge library of modules and packages that you can use. There's a lot of them that are built into Node.js, and one of them that we'll explore when we look at interacting with the file system. The file system module is part of Node.js. You don't have to install it. But then there are third-party modules. You can write your own modules as well and publish them, and other people use them. The third-party modules that you can install, or third-party packages that you can install with NPM, which is the Node Package Manager. That gives you access to a whole universe, and by universe, I mean literally universe. I mean, if there were Martians who could code, they'll probably be writing Node modules, right? And you get Node modules from Mars. That's going to happen soon. Not yet. But yeah, you have access to a whole universe of packages. A package is essentially a small bit of software, a solution someone's created for a problem. Express is a Node package that someone created to make it easy to set up web servers. Now, could you create a web server without Express? Absolutely. You can do that natively in Node, but it's a lot more complex. All right? You can do that natively in Node, it's a lot more complex. Express just makes it easier to do that. All right? So that's what Express is. We do npm install Express. That installs that package and makes it available for us to use in developing. Now remember, these packages are software, but they're not software that you use as a consumer, right? They're software that you use as a developer. If we go back to our carpentry analogy, packages are like the different pieces and parts that you need to make furniture. A hammer is a package. It's a tool, right? But you need it. You would go to Home Depot and buy a hammer. nails, glue, wood, studs, bolts, nuts. Those are all different packages, and each solve one, a particular problem or a series of problems in the same space. So think of packages as building blocks, tools, things that you need to solve your problem, but they're solutions others have already created. Okay? And that's an NPM is the repository. It's a public repository. It's based off of Git. It's a repository that manages all of the different NPM packages and their dependencies. Right? So it also knows, hey, okay, this package here actually depends on other packages for it to do its own work. And that's very, very normal. It's hard to find a package today that doesn't depend, on other packages. So NPM knows the connections between the different packages. And those connections and other information is stored in package.js.
So does this mean that NPM and Node are two completely different things?
Yes. They're two completely different things, but they're tightly coupled together. NPM is a repository, but it has a node module.
So,
right?
So NPM is like Git?
NPM is not like Git. It is built around Git. It uses Git. NPM and Git, they're not the same thing at all.
Okay.
So Git is a source control system. It manages source code, merges them together, helps you track the differences between them. That's what Git does. NPM is a repository. Git allows you to create repositories. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And NPM is a repository by itself. It's a database of packages.
I see. Kind of like the way our classroom that we created on Git is a repository.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that now.
So NPM really, in its back end, NPM is actually a database of repositories.
I see.
Right?
So
because each package, let me explain it this clearly. Each package in NPM is a Git repository.
Gotcha.
Right? So NPM is a library of packages. Git is a repository tool. It allows you to create repositories, manage repositories, and all that. NPM does not do that. NPM allows you to register, so it's called the NPM registry. You create a package, you push it out to Git, you register it with NPM, right? And it becomes available to the public to NPM install.
But those packages, if by magic I made all those packages disappear and NPM was empty, Node will still be Node. It wouldn't change what Node is. It's not like those are the things that make up Node.
No.
Gotcha.
Node will still run.
I see.
Because Node is its own software.
It's its own thing. Okay.
NPM allows you to bring in Node modules created by third parties
that now work with Node.
Yes.
So can I put it this way and tell me if this analogy makes sense? Because this is the way I've been looking at it in my head. So, okay. So Node allows me to write a novel, but NPM is like a library with pre-existing novels, and I can borrow from those novels to add to my book.
Yep.
To create a book, and when my book's ready, if I'm happy, I can actually add it to the NPM library, and somebody else can borrow it and use it to create. That's the way.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay.
As long as you have your citations right, yes, that's a perfect analogy.
Okay.
And there is that concept as well, because you have to make sure that you use the right licenses. Now, most packages have the open source license, but not all. There are commercial packages that you have to pay for to use commercially. So
okay. So is NPM
yes
all free, or is it a mix of those?
It's a mix.
Okay.
It's a mix. One example of a package that's not purely free, AM charts. We talked about this, right? Sorry. We talked about this. But look at this. If you look at licensing, right? You can use it for free. But if you want to build a single website commercially with it, you have to pay $180, right? If you want the charts and the maps, you pay $270. You want timelines. Now, if you want to use it for a single app or software as a service, then you have to pay $1,200, 1,800, 2,400, right? Now, if you want to use it OEM license, or OEM is original equipment manufacturer, you actually want to embed it on a piece of equipment that you're selling, right? Then you have to pay for an OEM license, and then you can get an extended OEM license for $8,000. But you know what? If you come to download, guess what? npm install and charts 4. You see that? So it's an npm, but it's totally free. You can use it personally to develop and play with for free. So if you want to use it on a website, you're going to have to cap out up to $270. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, but it leads me to another question. At what point they come chase me for money?
So because it's code,
yeah,
and your stuff is on the internet, as soon as you turn it on, they probably know that you're using it commercially.
Gotcha.
Right. Now they may check you up and be like, oh, yeah, so small fry. It's going to cost us more to chase him, and well, hey, make $1 million. They're like, yo, all right. You're using that stuff for free. You owe us $800,000. You know what I mean? So it's always important to know what the license is for a package you're using.
Right.
Plus, yes.
Okay, sorry. Go on. So is that down to me? So let's say I heard about this and I didn't realize it was something chargeable. I did an npm install, started using it. Is this responsibility of me to check?
It is.
Okay.
You're the developer. So when you're going to install an npm package and you go to look at it, it's important to also check, especially if you're doing this professionally and working for a company, it's important to always check the licensing and contact the company, right? And let the company know, okay, this is super cool and everything, but if we're going to use this, we need to get a license for it, right? And now, depending on the type of company, if it's a nonprofit, I used this for a nonprofit, and they contacted them and got a waiver to use it for free. They got a free license because it's a nonprofit. And even if you're using it commercially for your own company, you can call them and say like, yo, you know what, I'm a startup, I'm broke, help a brother out. And I think developers are typically super awesome, generous people. So, yeah. So that's it. So NPM is like a library. It is a library of packages that have been developed by other people. Some of the packages are free to use, MIT license, GPL license, GNU license, some are like that, open license. Just use your heart's content, nobody cares. But some are restricted.
So I understand that JavaScript is a language, right? So if somebody types, if somebody types, let's say they define a constant and then they type console log, whatever, that's JavaScript. I know what JavaScript is. It's code. It's a way of telling the computer what to do. So And I know what Angular is. Angular is prepackaged, like different packets of JavaScript that are already prepackaged. So you call them up easily using the Angular framework. Now, what is Node? Is Node also like that? Is Node also prepackaged bits of JavaScript,
Yep.
or is it written in another language?
Remember, I said they are equivalent.
Beautiful.
Node, Angular, they're both frameworks.
Frameworks. All right.
Right?
All right.
Now, Node was not written in JavaScript.
That's why I asked that question, because I heard
now,
like they were written in C++ or something like that.
Right. Now, there are two different things to understand. Node, while it's a framework, because it runs on the server directly, while Angular runs in the browser. So Node needs to connect to the operating system. As far as today is concerned, you can't write JavaScript to connect directly to the operating system. It has to run in a JavaScript interpreter.
Gotcha.
So Node.js is a JavaScript interpreter as well as being a JavaScript framework for server-side development. Angular cannot run by itself. It has to run in a browser or some other JavaScript interpreter.
Gotcha.
So you can run Angular in a Node interpreter.
I see.
Right?
Did you say you can or you can't?
You can. You
Okay.
can. There is what's called server-side Angular or server-side rendering of Angular. It's a slightly more advanced concept, and it has its benefits. I'm not a big fan of it, but it actually has use cases where you would use it.
But can I ask a stupid question here?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're telling me is Node is basically Google Translate for JavaScript, so that's to talk to the server, but it's not. Itself is not written in Java.
Mm.
What is Node written in?
It's written in C or C++.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, it is not like Google Translate per se.
Okay.
Right? It is, how do I put it? Because it's an interpreter, not a translator. And the difference here is that it converts the JavaScript into a format that the computer can actually execute. The computer is not executing raw JavaScript, right? An interpreter takes your for statement and converts it to, because a computer does not understand English.
Yeah.
Computers have no language.
So can I ask another stupid question here?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this C++ built thing called Node that takes JavaScript, interprets it into language that the computer itself can understand directly.
Mm-hmm.
That language, is that what they call machine language, or what is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're going through assembly, machine, low level, they call low level languages. That's what the computer really, really understands. And essentially it's a series of zeros and ones.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, if we ask you to code that, I know a guy that writes assembly and machine language, right?
Directly?
As easily, yes, he writes it directly. He's the guy, and he's the only person I know that does that I've met in my life. He's the guy that created AutoCAD, right?
Created what?
AutoCAD.
Okay. Oh, so, like the drawing.
Architecture software.
Yeah.
Software that architects use to design.
Yes. So he's the only person I've met in my life that writes assembly and can write it in real time. The same way we are writing JavaScript. So anyway, let's not digress too much. So that's Node.js. And again, all our interactions with Node are in JavaScript. If you look at my screen right here, and let me tell you how basic Node is. If I type Node, my terminal, I have a Node console. I can say const x equals 5, right? I can say const y equals 6. I can say x plus y. You see that? Counts me 11. I say x times y, 30. X to the power of y, right?
So we're doing that because you enabled Node. Outside of Node, you can't just start writing JavaScript
Right.
in your command prompt.
Look at
That
this.
what you're saying.
Look at this, const x.
Okay.
It says command const not found.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So that is it, Node.
That helps me.
And this is Node. This is Node by itself. Node is a program on my computer, right? It's a program on my computer at the same level as the terminal itself, or the browser, or Word, or Windows, or whatever.
So
It's
another way to look at it could be when we write JavaScript and it affects the browser. It's because there's an engine in the browser that interprets JavaScript.
Yes. Your browser has a JavaScript engine that supports a specific version of JavaScript, and you can turn it off. You literally.
Or you can't call Node an engine also.
No, Node is a software on your computer. The JavaScript engine is a different thing. It's a JavaScript interpreter.
Okay.
Right, okay. But it's running in the browser. The interpreter does not exist by itself. You can't just install a JavaScript interpreter. I don't know how to put it. The interpreter in your browser, you can't just take it and install it on your computer without the browser. It's a part of the browser. It's a package. It's a component of the browser. Right? But let's not go down. I don't want you thinking you're complicating matters. You're digging too deep. Right? And I think you'll confuse yourself a lot more if you start trying to parse all of those different pieces. That is you trying to figure out how the factory, you're trying to make furniture. You're trying to figure out how the factory that makes nails, exactly how do they make these nails? Where do they source the iron ore from? Right? You can find that out if you want to, but
I'm just trying to find out how these things are connected. The whole thing is a mess in my head. It's
yes,
like
and that's what I'm trying to say. You're going too deep. It's only going to become a deeper mess because, again, you're trying to figure out where they get the iron ore to make the nails that you're using in making your furniture. You're trying to figure out how do they mine it, how do they clean it, how do they get it to that color. It doesn't change how you make furniture. It doesn't affect the quality of furniture that you make. But it can confuse the hell out of you and slow down your ability to make furniture. So don't dig into all of that. You don't need all of that information. Like, it's totally useless. Nobody is going to ask you. Nobody cares. Most developers don't know. But they are still awesome developers. You get what I mean? So don't dig that deep. If you go, it's a whole rabbit hole. You can keep going. It's a whole rabbit hole. If I start trying to show you the underlying workings of your browser, you'll leave you a lot more confused about the whole thing. So let's not go that way. Let's stick with Node, JavaScript. It's all JavaScript. Angular, JavaScript, 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 JavaScript. And JavaScript is JavaScript, which means it is the same commands, the same const. Const is a const is a const. You write a const in Node and write a const in Angular, they mean exactly the same thing. There's no const for Node and const for Angular. If you write a let in Node and you write a let in Angular, it's exactly the same thing. Write a function in Node and a function in Angular, they'll do exactly the same thing if the code in them is the same. You get what I mean? Don't try to split them up. The only division you want to have is that Angular is front end, makes requests to the backend. Node is backend, handles requests coming in and provides responses. That's how you want to separate them. And so you think, okay, I need to build a UI for someone to do something. I'm going to do that in Angular because that's the only way I can create a user interface. Node can't do that. But hey, I need to connect to the database. If you're trying to think about how to solve the different parts of the problem, I need to connect to a database. Node is where I connect to a database, right? I need to, open up a file from the server. Node is how I do that. I can't do that in Angular because Angular does not have access to the file system. Node does. Whatever runs in your browser is actually insulated from your computer's underlying file system because it runs in what's called a sandbox. Well, again, we're not going to go into all those details. Beyond knowing that it's isolated from the file system and Node is not, that's it. Okay, and that's my strong recommendation. Don't dig too deep into the underlying mechanizations of it, right? At least not at this stage. You will confuse yourself.
So quick question. So Node we downloaded. Angular came with Visual Studio Code, right?
No.
Angular works with the app function in Visual Studio Code. Was that something we also downloaded?
No, Angular does not come with Visual Studio Code or work with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is an IDE. It's an integrated development environment. You have been writing your Node code in Visual Studio Code as well, right? That's where we've also been writing our Node code.
Yes.
So Visual Studio Code is just a tool. It's a text editor.
It's like Notepad.
You could have written it in Notepad. I can add our Node code here. What's the classroom, right? Index, right? This is the editor that I prefer to use. It's called Vim.
Okay.
This is still editing Node. So the interaction between Node and Visual Studio Code is VS Code is just an editor. It's a simple text editor. It just has tools to make your development life easier. Okay. But Angular does not come with it. Angular does not know it exists. Angular does not care because Angular is not VS Code. Angular is a JavaScript framework, right?
You get here.
So basically everything we've been using, we actually either downloaded or used NPM to install, and we're all just building everything using Visual Studio Code, basically like what you just described.
Yes, Visual Studio Code is just your editor.
You wanted just trying to say she doesn't remember when she installed Angular. She's waiting for you to tell her when she did install Angular.
Since this is not a front-end class, I do not want to talk about Angular. All right. So let's take a break now. And then we'll come back into Node. And we're going to do some things. All right. Hopefully they will make more sense. Now that you understand that Node is, server side, lives on the server, let's actually write some more Node code and, get to interact with it. So let's take a 5-minute break, just in the bathroom, get some water, and then we'll continue. All right?
Thanks. Excellent.
All right. So see you in 5 minutes. I'll get some water too. I paused. All right. So if I did this here, const host, right? And I change this here to host.
You spell const wrong.
Yeah, on this. Okay. If I did this and I change that to host like that, I haven't solved the problem, right? because it's still hard coded. I need to make it a variable that is on the server. It's a server variable rather than a variable that's in my code. I need to make it what we call an environment variable. And an environment variable is just that. It's a variable that varies from environment to environment. So my machine is my development environment. Your machine is your environment. The production server is its own environment. The dev server is its own environment. If I have a staging server, it's its own environment. Each environment is different. So you can define variables on an environment level, and you can access those variables from your code. So the way I would do that, and I'm going to show you a way also, before I show you how to do that, let me correct something here. You see this line here, line 6? Can anyone notice anything about it? Just tell me the first thing that pops out to you about line 6.
It's white instead of red, like the rest.
Right.
Okay, that's a good thing. What else apart from the colors?
The rest are strings and
String.
Yeah. Well, just don't compare it with the others. Just line 6 by itself. What do you notice about that line by itself?
So key and value name is same.
The key and the value name are exactly the same. The value is a variable. This is a key, but they're exactly the same. So in ES6, remember, try not to repeat yourself. You can actually just do this. Just doing host like this translates to host, host. If you're using a variable that has the same identifier as the key, there's no need to spell it out host, colon host. So this is a very elegant way of doing it. So that allows me to just do this, which means, sorry, let me vim. That allows me to just do this. And that means I will have variables called host, user, password, database. This is ES6. This is ES6 syntax. So this is how you do it in the current version of JavaScript. In the old version of JavaScript, you'd have to do host colon host. But in the new version, we don't do that anymore. All right. So how do I get the variable if it is declared on my environment? How do I access an environment variable? Node.
Okay.
Now Node.js has a super global called process. This is an object that has a property called environment that is a JSON document of all your environment variables. So I'd have something like this. Host equals process.env.host. Const database equals process.env.database, right? Or we can say DB name. Let's do DB name. And this one, let's say DB host, right? And then const username equals our user, right? Okay. Now I have my script set up so that it now accepts the inputs from environment variable. Now, if I say, let's just do a console log so we can see. Console, no, I won't console log in here. So now we have environment variables. And that means that if I push this out and Wally pulls it and he runs it, he will have to provide his own database host, right? The database name, user, and password. He'll have to provide it. How do you provide it? You do this. Node. So before you call node, you know the way we would run it normally would be we just say node index, right? And this runs it. Well, look, it doesn't have a user, and it's showing an error because it says using password no. All my connection information is not set. The way I would need to set them on my environment is to do something like this. DB, before I call node index, so rather than just doing node index, I have to declare my environment variables first. So I'll say DB host equals localhost, DB name equals classroom, right? DB user equals classroom admin, DB password equals password 1234. And then I now say node index. You see now I have a different error, but look at my error. My error has changed because it's now trying to use classroom admin. You see the previous error? The username was empty and the password was empty, so it was saying using password no. But now that I've set those environment variables, username has a value and password is yes, different password has a value. So maybe I have a bug in my password, and I think I do. I think this is uppercase.
Was it not classroom user?
Oh, yeah, you're right. So classroom user. So if we come here to my user here, rather than classroom admin, and this is classroom user. And what's the password? Lowercase password?
Most likely.
Yes, and that's what it is. And you see, it now runs. Okay.
So that's interesting. So the fact that you've typed all those variables before the node index bit, is that a function of that of how you've written it in node index itself, and not of Node.js itself?
It's a function of. So here, my connection, I am now asking to use environment variables. So I'm asking for data on the environment that Node is running in, that my current process is running. So my current process, which is essentially my script, is the process object, right?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm not saying, okay, the environment of my process object get the DB host variable. The environment of my current process, get the DB name, DB user, DB password. Okay, that is what I've done here. But what I've done is I've set those variables on my environment because these are assignments. You can see that, right? These are assignments. Across all programming languages, pretty much, this is how you assign a value. So these are assignments. And then I now call my node command. And this does it. Okay? One other thing. Let's do this. index.js. Let's change this our port, right? Let's make it a variable. So let's say const port equals. How do I make the port an environment variable? Anyone? I want to make my port an environment variable, not a hard-coded variable. Here it's
Equal to
4300.
so you say it's equal to process dot env dot port. I guess capital ports. Yeah.
Yes. Now your environment variables are typically uppercase because they're constants.
Okay.
And they're not just constants in your code, they're constants across the entire environment.
Okay.
Right? So you make it all uppercase. And this is the convention, the standard. So if I make it, if I define my port as the environment variable, here where I listen, I can now change it to port. Right? And then here in my code, I can change it to use that same port variable. And what am I doing to the string here? What's this called? What I just did.
Concatenating?
Concatenating, yes. I'm concatenating the string. All right. So this done now. If I'm going to run this, I need to add a port to it. If I now change the port to port 8080, so I need to say equal, right? And I run that. Look at that. Starting server on port 8080. Go to HTTP localhost 8080. If I click on this, my server is running on port 8080. You see that here? Okay, so that is how you use environment variables, and that is how you declare. That's how you set and run environment variables. One last thing on that topic before we move on. I mean, does everyone understand this before I move on? Before I say the last thing. Any questions about this?
Understand bits and pieces.
What bits do you understand? What bits do you not understand?
Well, I guess the way you had declared the database username, localhost, and all that seemed fairly straightforward. But then I guess I wouldn't have thought you could do that in the code. But that's just the thing.
Yes. So it's important to know that you can do this, and there's so many variables that you would want to set like that. If they're, especially if they're anything to do with authentication, connecting to a database, connecting to an external server, you never have it in the code. You have it as an environment variable. Now the
I still don't.
Yeah. Go on, Wale.
No, I was going to say I still don't understand the environment variable.
Okay.
I saw you do it, but I didn't take.
Okay, so try to explain what you heard.
So yeah, and what I heard was you cannot hard code the information.
You can, you should not.
Or rather, you should not. And I believe that's for security reasons.
Also, beyond security reasons, there's a second reason I gave for it. Your database, right? You have a MySQL database, right?
Yes.
What's the username on it?
You mean mine or generally speaking?
Yours. There's no generally speaking. Actually.
Oh, sorry.
Like yours.
The username
yours
would probably be my name or
yeah.
something like that.
But the code does not allow you to use your name. Right? The code we had before What's it going to let you use your name? It required a specific name, right? Remember, let me show you this. I'm talking about this. If you on your computer, here, I'll stop sharing. And can you share?
Hold on.
And I want you to share your connection.js.
You need to enable screen sharing.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're ready.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So I'll stop sharing now. And then, oh, come on, stop sharing. Yeah, hold on. My Zoom is not cooperating. So here's what I'm gonna do. Let me see if I can make you.
Wait, be sure it won't kick you out. It's possible to make people co-hosts. I found that out, but I don't know if your account is that kind of account.
If it's more than the basic, you can make him your host.
Yeah, I can make you my host, but
co-host.
Yeah, I don't have a co-host option here. Yeah. So I'll make you a host and then you make me a host back.
Okay.
All right. So you can take over sharing now.
All right. So now I'm sharing my screen. If I can figure out how to make you the host.
Yeah, just go to participants.
Yeah, all of a sudden. Okay, participants.
And then mouse over me and go to more.
Yeah. Make host. All right. Yes. All right. So are you back to being the host?
Yeah, I'm back to being the host.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Oh wait, I'm not back to being the host. What's going on with my screen?
Let me go back and check. It says you're the host.
Okay. Well, I mean, can others see your screen? What screen can you guys see?
Yes, we can see.
I'm not sure. Is that Wallet's screen? Yeah, that I'm looking at now.
Yes, that's Wallet's.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll talk to it. I know what I'm asking to show, and then sort out the sharing. Okay. So yeah. So Wale, if you open your connection.js, right? And let me know once it's open.
I've opened it.
Okay.
Well, you mean you still can't see?
I can't see your screen. That's my Zoom acting up. Let's go on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So if you open your connection.js,
yeah.
What is your username? Your user?
It's classroom_user.
What's your password?
Password 1234.
Okay. Now what you see right there is that for this to connect to a database on your machine, that user must exist on your machine with that password. You can't personalize it. You can't use your own private user name and password.
Well, are you saying this is actually a standard?
No.
Okay, this is an example, right?
That is what we had.
This is what we set up, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
So I'm telling you that the problem with that is that you can decide what username and password you want to use.
Okay.
You have to use the same as everybody else, all 67 people on this project.
Okay, okay.
That's the problem, right?
Why?
Because I know the username and password of at least to get to the database on your machine.
Oh, gotcha.
We're all
Okay.
sharing it. It's hard coded.
Okay. Yeah, that's bad. That's
Yeah,
bad.
I have. If you decide, and let's say for some reason you decided, oh, you wanted to use your own username and password, and you set it up and you change this file and you commit and push to Git, everybody knows your new username and password. But beyond that, the application breaks for everybody except for you because you decided to change it.
Like I would have access and they wouldn't have access.
It will blow up for everybody else. And
Gotcha.
everybody's going to have to open this file and either change their settings on their computer to match what's in the file, or change the file again. And if they decide to change it to their own, it will blow up for everybody else, including you. And look at that.
That makes sense.
It's chaos. So the way to do it is your machine is your environment. So you have to be able to set up a variable on your environment that the code can access. It's not a variable in the code, which is why I said it is not just defined as const.
So basically 60, so whatever of us will create different environments.
You already have different environments because you're on different computers.
Yes.
Your computer is your environment. So there are as many environments as there are people on the project.
Okay. So it's not like we're creating the environment. Okay.
No, you already have the environment. Your computer is your environment.
Okay.
But you have to then be able to provide variables in that environment that tells the code, when you're on my machine, this is the username to use, this is the password to use, this is the this is the that. Specific to your machine. If it goes to another person's machine, their configuration will tell it what to do. It's not hard coded.
I see. So now, to try and explain that in a sense is, okay, the computer, officially it's localhost, but on my computer, I map localhost to something else. Is that the logic?
No.
Can I give a business example? And this is a real life example for me.
Okay.
This solves my problem with what I did when I created my instance on AWS.
Correct.
Okay. Because when I created my instance on AWS, it refused me to use a simple password. I had to do underscore. So I've got a totally different password for the same classroom. So if I was running that index.js file previously, it won't work for me. But now, with the new saved one, I can then give it the one that I've saved for my instance, and it will work. Right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not really.
Okay. Let me put it that way. If you use the old file, you're forced to have a password 1, 2, 3, 4. You have no choice.
Okay.
Which is wrong.
Yes.
I want to use the same code, but I want to use it on my own machine that I've created somewhere else.
Yes.
And you want to use your own configuration.
Yes, I understand the reason why. I'm trying to now understand the code, the coding that you. How did you now code the?
Right. So the idea here is that your environment you can now set configuration on your environment.
Okay.
So let's say.
So what's that in English?
That is what it is in English. You can set configuration on your environment. If we all buy exactly the same Toyota Corolla.
Yes.
We'll have
Okay.
We'll have different keys. We'll have different keys. My key will only unlock mine.
Yours,
It doesn't matter that they're all Toyota Corollas.
Yes.
If you come and try to use your key, we won't, because mine is configured for me.
Yes.
That's the idea here, is that your environment is configured.
Okay.
You have your own database. We're not sharing databases here. Each person has installed MySQL.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But right now, you can't install it the way you want. You have to install it exactly the same as everybody else.
Okay.
Because the configuration is hard-coded. What this change now does is that, hey, you can install it however you want, wherever you want. You can configure your environment to say, look, this is where my database is. This is the username. This is the password. This is the name of the table.
Okay, so now I'm going to return. You can now take over sharing so that you can show me the coding that you used to do that.
All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what it is. Process, the environment, and then the variable name. The way you specify those environment variables is you have to initialize them before you start the node module. Okay, so DB host, local host, DB name, classroom. Let me show you an example. I'm going to go into MySQL.
When you put DB in front of the host, DB in front of the user, and then when you did port, put DB, so did you have to? Could it have just been host rather than
it could
DB
have been host.
Okay.
It could, but in practice, you're going to have many different hosts, many different usernames, many different passwords.
Got you.
To get. So, but which host are you talking about? If you have an Elasticsearch host, right, and a database, they're both hosts. They both have host addresses, but they're two different addresses.
Got you.
So, which host are you talking about, right? But the port is the application port. It's not a DB port. If I was connecting to a DB through a specific port, I could actually also have DB ports. Let's say my MySQL is set up on a different port, and I need to specify the actual port for it. I would have DB port. Yeah, so like that. So now here, let's come back to what I was going to do. So okay, I'm going to create database, right? Master classroom. This is what I want my application to connect to. And I'm going to run all on master classroom to C admin identified by and then we'll put this in quotes. Okay?
That's sound.
Now look at that. So I've done this now. And if I hold on, let me fix this.
Is everybody hearing that? Doom, doom.
That's my computer. That's because I'm only using a terminal. So it's called the bell. Sorry. It's called the bell. Okay, so if I say I'm gonna do something here that I haven't showed you guys. Okay, and then here, master classroom. Let's see. Oh. Oh, okay. 1 second, sorry. What did I do?
I think you did not provide the database name.
Oh yeah, that's what I didn't do. Because I was wondering here, I thought I did it earlier. So Sorry, 1 second. Secret. All right. So now I can actually do it. Yeah. All right. So this is what I'm trying to do here. What I did was I just copied the database, so I don't have to recreate it. Then I can actually go into MySQL now. And I'm going to drop database classroom. Okay, so I don't have that classroom database anymore. If I try to run this, look, unknown database classroom, right? But so my database is now completely different from everybody else's, right? And I'll fix my password here, which will be and then my DB user is cadmin, which is different from everybody else as well, cadmin. And my DB host is master classroom. Okay, now when I run this, it runs. I don't care what Wale's setting is, what anybody else's setting is. I have my own personalized settings now. And so the code that does that is changing the variable to read from the process environment. That is literally what this is saying. For the running process, get the environment variables and get the variable called DB host and save it into this variable host. Same thing here, DB name, save it into the variable database. DB user, save it into the variable user. DB password, save it into the variable password. And then use those values to connect. That's what I've done here. Now, very quickly, I'm going to show you one more thing. And here, doing this every time you want to start the application is extremely annoying, right? Is there anyone that enjoys doing this, that would like to constantly do this? Node index was very nice, right? So there is a developer package that helps with this. I'm going to copy these out, right? And I'm going to create
NodeMon.
No, not NodeMon. So I'm going to create a file, and you'll find this in very many projects and many frameworks called a .env file, right? And I'm going to paste.
I was waiting for this part.
Yeah. So this file now allows you to save this information for future use, so you don't have to always do it. And you will find this in most modern projects.
And the information you put here is what you decide.
And this
your
file,
private stuff,
yes,
right?
And this file is not committed. So if I look at my git ignore right now, if it doesn't have a .env, which it already does, you see that? .env environment variables file is ignored by git. So even though I just created this file now and I do a git status, it doesn't show me that that file is untracked.
I see.
Because it doesn't, Git is not tracking that file by default, because that file should not leave my machine.
So Git knows that because the reason why Git knows this is because you installed a package to inform Git, or does Git know that for anything with that extension?
In .git ignore, I haven't installed the package yet, but there's a file called Git ignore.
Yeah, how did it get into git ignore is what I'm wondering.
I set it up when I set up the project.
Oh.
So in git ignore, I set this up.
So okay. So these are things you put in there.
Yes. I set this up when I started.
Oh, gotcha.
Actually ask Git to generate a standard git ignore for a Node project. So you see Node modules is there, which is why Node modules is pushed out.
So in a standard git ignore, would the .mvn always be there, or do I have to add it?
Yeah, that was my question.
It will be there if you ask Git to generate it.
Okay.
If you're writing it manually, you should add it.
Gotcha.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy .env to .env example. Okay? And I'm going to say here, and I'm going to remove these and leave you a shell. And when you pull, you have to fill this out with your values. Okay? And so you pull it out. So two things you need to do. Copy .env to .env. So then readme. Okay, I'll do this after the class. Let me just do the very last bit very quickly. And then to make it easy to run, to use the .env file, we're going to do npm install save dev. This is purely a developer dependency, right? And there's a package called .env. Okay. So this package helps you read that .env into your environment variables before running Node. And so you will do Node with the require flag .env/config index. And this is your new command to start the application. And look at that. Starts my web server cleanly. No issues whatsoever. And whatever I change, if I go to my .env and I change my port here to, let's say 8081, and I run this, start running on 8081. Okay, so again, the new command, instead of just saying node index, you require the .env config. And that reads your .env into environment variables. And .env can become really huge, right? As we build and build and build, we keep adding things to .env. And it just keeps going. Okay? So this is in a standard, typical development environment. Even if you're working on your own personal project, this is how you should do it. Because you never want to have your authentication information committed into the repository. You want to keep it on your machine. You also don't want to have it on the server. For those who are in the infrastructure class, you remember last time we set the environment variables on the beanstalk to read it off the beanstalk. So this application now, when we do infrastructure tomorrow, we need to update our beanstalk to now have these variables, right? So that it can run.
Right. So we're going to update the beanstalk to look at this file.
No.
Go
this file is not leaving my computer.
Right. So what we're going to do in the beanstalk?
We're going to set the environment variables on the beanstalk. Remember, there's a place where we can set it.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll set the name, key and value, DB name.
And the way we're going to set it on the beanstalk, is it similar to this, what we did here?
No.
It has its own method.
We did that in the last.
Yeah, that's some little boxes that we filled out.
Yes. That's setting environment variable.
Yeah, but is that just a graphical interface to do similar to what we've done here, basically?
It's no. What we've done here is a method. It's a graphical interface. No, it's not.
Okay.
It does it in a completely different way.
Different matter. Okay. All right. Okay.
Because I would say it's. Can you hear me still?
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. Fine. Yeah.
Right. Because I lost my alt tab. Where the hell is it? Okay, there it is. Right. So it is a lot more similar to this. What it does is a lot more similar to this.
Got you.
It doesn't create a .m file. It does
Okay.
more
Okay.
like this. It starts up the server or the application. It starts the run command with these variables. So that's more of
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, and just for those who are wondering, is there anyone here that's not on the infrastructure? Is there anyone in this call right now that's not on the infrastructure squad? All right, so let me put in my password here and then just a reminder.
I think there are a few people here that are not in infrastructure.
Well, I asked. I want them to speak up.
Yeah, people are like muted and stuff.
But since I didn't hear anybody, I'm going to assume everybody here is on infrastructure.
Assume at your peril.
No. Assume at their peril for speaking up. Yeah. I have no risk in this. All right, so here's software training environment. Come to configuration. We come to software. And here we have environment properties. Special environment variables. So this is where you set DB name, right? And like I did for me, master restaurant, right? Then I'd come and set DB user, right? CV admin, and so on and so forth. So I accidentally hit the back button, right? So this is where you set your environment variables, and it does that thing. Okay? So we'll stop here. We're already almost 10 minutes over. Any questions? Does this little bit make sense? Are we still completely lost it?
It's just crazy how this JavaScript everything is so versatile.